Hello everyone, it's Robin the Delta Crafter and I want to thank you for joining me for another video on my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be working with some extra special alcohol inks. One of my co-workers had a mother who was an artist and she recently passed away. And so as they were going through her art studio, she found some alcohol inks and she knows that I use these. So she gifted these alcohol inks to me, which are now a treasure as a part of my stash. I really appreciate her thinking of me this way and passing on the supplies to me and knowing that they will continue to be used in her mother's honor. So let's take a look at the supplies that we're going to be using. Of course, we're going to be using some alcohol inks, and I have a pretty wide assortment now. And then we're also going to be using two different types of paper. We're going to be using a white piece of craft plastic that you guys know that's one of my favorite mediums to use alcohol inks on. And then I have a piece of black Yupo paper that I'm also going to be using. I'll be sure to link a video in the description box where I discuss the different supplies and things that you can use alcohol inks on. I also brought out some alcohol blending solution, although I did not use this for this project. I'm always going to have my 91% isopropyl alcohol, and I'm going to bring my blowing tool that's going to give my alcohol ink some movement on the papers. So I've gone through my alcohol ink collection and I've chosen the ones that I want to use. All of them except for these two were given to me or gifted to me. So I'm going to be using some Snow Cap Mixative as well as some Statue Alloy, some Aqua and some Sandal alcohol inks, as well as some Salmon and Shell Pink alcohol inks. These pastel colors were the ones that were gifted to me by my coworker. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to lay down a little bit of alcohol ink. So for this first creation on this white paper, I was kind of going for a ocean scene, kind of like sand, and then a little bit of ocean and a little bit of some pastel peachy kind of color, which are traditional ocean scene kind of colors. So I've put down that isopropyl alcohol and a good amount of the sandal alcohol ink. And now I'm just going to blow that around with my blower until I get the alcohol inks in the position that I like for them. One of the free things about alcohol inks is they really do have a mind of their own. So it's really, really a cathartic process for me to use alcohol inks because you have to release the control to the alcohol inks. So I've laid down some Aqua here as well as a little bit of that isopropyl alcohol, and I blew that around with the blowing tool. And now I'm going to come in with the third color, which is Shell Pink. So I'm just put a little bit of that down. I'm actually going to put both of the pinks down on the salmon colors. So salmon and shell pink will go down here and kind of mix those two together. So we'll have some light spots and then some a little bit darker spots because both of these colors are fairly light. You'll see in just a moment when I get the alcohol, the blower out and start to move things around. So I'm using that blowing tool and I'm moving the paint, the alcohol ink around, and I kind of want them to blend into each other. So like the ocean water is blending into the sand, and we could imagine that is a sky, or it could be a part of some organism or even a shell in the ocean. Whatever we want that to represent, we can make it do that or be that. So I'm just going to add a little bit more alcohol here and kind of move the inks around a little bit more until I get a nice composition that I'm happy with. A little bit more finessing of the peaches there, the salmon and the shell pink. And then I think we're going to call it complete with this one. So I'm really happy with the way things came together. So now I'm going to set this over to the side and let this dry. Alcohol inks dry really quickly, typically. And you'll see what happens with the next creation. So there's not typically a long wait time for you to be able to move on to the next steps in your creating. So now here is where we start to have a little bit of mishap. I'm going to use this black piece of UPO paper, and I'm going to lay down the isopropyl alcohol. I never used these pale colored inks before, so I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen or how they were going to show up on the black UPO paper. This was all, trial and error. And as you can see, with those light colors, they really are not showing up on the UPO paper at all. If you tilt it in the light, you may be able to see a little, you can see that something's there, but you can't see the color for sure. So I'm just continuing with the process because I'm going to follow it and see it through. And I add a little bit more alcohol and continue to blow that around with my blowing tool. And I'm realizing that no, this really is not working. So I decide, okay, maybe I need to change the color of the paper a little bit or add something to it to make the lighter colors stand out, give them some sort of background. So I put down quite a generous amount of the isopropyl alcohol and then followed that up with a generous amount of the snow cap mixative. And this is where things start to go awry. I encourage you to have a lighter hand with the mixatives than I did. This is going to be the beginning of me really questioning what I was doing with these alcohol inks. You can see that a little bit of that shell pink alcohol ink color that was on there is starting to show up now that we've got that snow cap on there. But still, it is entirely too much of the snow cap on here. You can see I'm still having to add more and more alcohol to get that snow cap to really keep moving around and to mix with the colors that are already laid down on this piece of UPO paper. And now I'm like, I don't know what this is gonna be. I don't know what this is gonna end up looking like. I'm not happy with it right now, but I'm gonna keep going. That is one of the things I've learned with using alcohol inks is there will likely be a time in the process where you're like, I don't like this. This is not going well. But I encourage you to keep going as I did here. So I've added the Aqua in. I'm having to add more and more alcohol. And right now, the alcohol ink on this UPO paper is pretty thick because I'm adding more ink on top of the ink that was already there and on top of that snow cap. And it's just, it's a hot mess. I'm still going, but I'm not liking what I'm seeing. I even added some of the alloy, which is also thick. It's not as thick as the snow cap, but it's definitely thicker than regular alcohol tinted alcohol inks. So I'm adding more isopropyl alcohol and gotten that moved around. I'm trying to make sure that I have all the colors represented in this piece. And ooh, child, this was a test of my creative patience for sure, because I wasn't even liking the way the colors were blending together. It just was not doing it for me. But I stuck with it. Again, because there is so much on here, alcohol ink on here, I decided to bring in my heat gun. And if you use a heat gun on UPO paper or craft plastic, remember, this is plasticized paper. So you want to keep your heat tool moving, and you want to not really let the heat go directly to the paper because the paper will wrinkle and warp. I decided I'm gonna stop. I don't like what I'm seeing, but I'm gonna stop right here. So then I just decided to go ahead and clean up my craft space and get ready to move on to the next parts of the process in creating these cards. So I used a little bit of isopropyl alcohol and cleaned up my space. So I decided that I kind of wanted a little bit of all the three colors that I used on the white craft paper. So I brought in my nested rectangle dies from Hero Arts and cut out a rectangle. And because of the way I cut this out, I'm actually going to be able to get two cards out of this one alcohol ink creation. I moved on to the black alcohol ink paper, and as I'm trying to size it up with the nested A2 arches dies from scrapbook.com, I noticed that the paper is still a little tacky. Um, but I'm deciding I'm just gonna keep going because I don't know if I'm gonna use this anyway at this point because again I'm not sure that I even like this. So I laid my nested arch down, run it through my die cutting machine, and lo and behold, it was very tacky, and so much so that the alcohol ink transferred to my cutting plate and kind of got all over my cutting plate and the die for that matter. But I left all of this in here because I wanted to show you even mishaps and mistakes can be cleaned up and rectified and made into something beautiful. So just like I did before in cleaning up my space, just I used a little bit of that isopropyl alcohol on my cutting plate and was able to clean that up beautifully so that I'm able to use that for creations in the future. And I just did the same thing. I took that same towel, ran it around that die, and was able to clean that up nicely. For the sentiment for these cards, I'm using this Thank You 3 set, die set from scrapbook.com, and I use that on all of the cards. So here's the first card that I created using the white craft paper alcohol ink creation, and I'm really, really happy with how that came together. And then I took the leftover frame from that card and created a second card. And this card is a little bit bigger because that piece of craft plastic was 4x6. So this card is just a little bit bigger and I'll have to place it in probably a 5x7 envelope. And here is the black Yupo paper card. I did go ahead and use it. I ended up liking the texture that was created by the cutting plate. There was a little bit of a rip, so I used the sentiment to cover that, and you would never know that if I had not shared that with you. And with that, these 3 cards in this video is complete. I want to thank you again for joining me for another video on my YouTube channel. If you have enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel to join the Delta Crafter YouTube family. You can always find me on Instagram and Facebook at The Delta Crafter, as well as on my website, thedeltacrafter.com. And until next time, everyone, enjoy!